Please. Our next speaker is Rabbi Ari Berman. Rabbi Berman's topic is the subconscious effects of the sabbatical year, a halachic look at the way Shmita shapes and elevates our lives. Who is Rabbi Berman? All right. Well, Rabbi Ari Berman, who many of you may know, is the former rabbi of Manhattan's very prestigious Jewish Center. He's a musmach of REITs of Yeshiva University, where he also received both his BA in philosophy and an MA in Jewish philosophy. Rabbi Berman is a noted speaker and author who lectures widely throughout Israel and the United States. His shiurim combine profound psychological insight and sensitivity with deep erudition, conceptual sophistication, path-breaking creativity, humor, and inspiration. Did I get that right, Rabbi Berman?
That's better than I could have said.
Rabbi Berman had made Aliyah a couple of years ago with his, and that presently lives in Neve Daniel with his wife Anita and his 5 children. 5, correct?
Correct.
Okay. He's also currently completing his doctoral dissertation in philosophy of halacha at Hebrew University. Rabbi Berman.
That was impressive. Where'd you get all that?
I'll let you know. It was from a website. So I'll sit here.
Okay. Thank you very much for that really overtly generous introduction. It is my honor to be here with you. I'd like to thank the Young Israel, Torah Mitzion, and the Great Synagogue for the invitation to speak this evening. It's also my honor to share this podium with Rabbi Moshe Pinchuk. When I entered Yeshiva and Yeshivat Har Etzion, as an American away for the year, Moshe Pinchuk, or Moshe Pinchuk at the time, was a name that was well known in the yeshiva for his erudition and for his learning and his knowledge, and his reputation has only increased as he continued on his track as a mechanech, and it's my honor, my deep honor, to be here with him this evening. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of my mashgiach ruchani, Rav Yosef Blau, whose direction and guidance was very important to me when I was younger in Yeshiva University, and continues to remain important to me today. Rabbi Blau. It has been reported that yesterday a number of Hamas terrorists, clothed in IDF uniforms and armed with heavy weaponry, emerged from an underground tunnel into Israel, opened fire on a passing army jeep, and killed 2 Israeli soldiers, Major Amotz Greenberg and Sergeant Adar Barsano. In the return fire, the soldiers killed 1 terrorist and chased the rest of the terrorists back to Gaza. The army reported that the weaponry found at the scene, including plastic handcuffs and tranquilizers, indicates that the goal of the attack was mass slaughter and hostage taking. It was the soldiers' bravery and the serendipity of the jeep passing by at that very moment that prevented such a terrible attack, and that saved the lives of a large number of people. We are in the midst of a very serious battle against the foe who seeks our complete destruction and is willing to utilize the most heinous methods including indiscriminately sending rockets into civilian areas and using their own civilians as human shields. We know that the Nisim and Niflaot that we have witnessed over these past couple of weeks are not a coincidence. We know that the fact that the Kippat HaBarzel was ready at this specific time, can you imagine the tragedies of what would happen today if the Kippat Barzel was not working and functioning and thousands of rockets came pouring into Israel? We know that all this is lo b'chayo v'lo b'koach ki im beruchi amar Hashem tzvakot, that it's not a coincidence, that it's the hand of God once again helping the Jewish people. And we also know that God acts in concert with human initiative, and it is the bravery and ingenuity of Tzahal, of our soldiers that are protecting us, that are keeping us safe. And in this small country, when everyone knows someone who is a chayal right now, who is in Gaza or at the borders of Gaza, our brothers, our sons, our nephews, our friends, our neighbors, when everyone knows someone right now who is mamish at harm's way, we cannot help but think of them. We are scared for them. We daven for them. I just heard before I came here of the tragic loss of 13 lives last night. Any loss is like a loss to a member of our own family. May Hashem continue to protect our brothers, our soldiers. May He return them safely to their homes. And may this military operation end with Am Yisrael and Medinat Yisrael in a stronger, more secure position. When I was coming here tonight, I have to say I had some mixed thoughts. Can we focus on a different topic with this military operation happening? Can we have the human capacity to think about something else when this was going on? And I think that, in truth, a night devoted to understanding Shemitah is actually very much related to what is going on in Gaza right now. For while this conflict with Hamas is a military conflict, it's also a theological conflict. We're not going to have time right now to go into the depths of the theological conflict, but to summarize in brief, on the table right now is the question, who is the rightful owner of Israel? In the eyes of Hamas, they are the true owners, and we are the occupiers. We are the interlopers who are here and don't belong here. And of course, in our eyes, we think differently. According to us, who is the true owner of this land? So it's interesting that there were two answers that were mentioned here. What are the two answers that were mentioned? Hashem and we are. There are two different answers, Hashem and we are. And it's those two answers, it's that interplay between Hashem and we are that is the crux of what Shemitah is about. The connection between Shemitah and the land of Israel is of course obvious, as it's one of the mitzvot tluyot ba'aretz, it's one of the mitzvot that's dependent on the land. But in truth, the connection is even more profound. If you look at your source sheets, does everybody have a source sheet? No. There's nothing I can do about that. Where are the organizers? We need some source sheets. Organizers, source sheets.
Yeah.
How we doing? No, none over here. Is there any over here? Any extra? If you have any extra, if you could pass it around, thank you. While we're waiting, is there a cup of water over there? Was somebody? Thank you. Okay? Okay, I'll try to read out loud to keep you informed. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Great, thanks. Okay, so if you look at source number 1, if you can, you'll see, or not, that in the beginning, that in the central section that relates to Shemitah, מדבר שם משה בהר סיני לאמור, דבר בני יסוף אמרת אליהם, כי תבואו אל הארץ שאני נותן לכם, ושבת הארץ שבת להשם. This is the central section, we'll talk about this more, that relates to the Shnat Shabbaton, that relates to Shemitah. Immediately afterwards, in the next parak, the Torah begins the tocha, the rebuke, of what's going to happen to the Jewish people if they don't follow the Torah. And it lists terrible, terrible things that are going to happen. They're going to be exiled, they're going to be punished, the children are going to be killed. Terrible, really terrible things. And what's the reason that these things are going to happen? What's the reason? We'll read it in English. If you turn to the second page in number 34, in verse 34. After this tochacha, after this rebuke, after the Jews are exiled, then shall the land enjoy your Sabbaths. As long as it lie desolate and you be in your enemy's land, even then shall the land rest and enjoy your Sabbaths. Meaning, what is the reason that this terrible punishment is happening? Because while you were in Israel, you didn't observe Shemitah. Because you didn't observe Shemitah, and the land didn't rest while you were in Israel, therefore you're going to be punished how? By being exiled, and the land will then rest. In fact, if you look at source number 3 in Divrei Hayam in Bet, we're told that the famous prophecy of Yirmiyahu, that there'll be 70 years between Bayit Rishon and Bayit Sheni, between the destruction of the first temple and the building of the second temple. What's the number? Where's the number 70 from? So the pasuk says that the number 70 is because there were 70 years of Shemitah, 70 Shmitot that were not kept. So therefore we need to rest 70 years. You have to be exiled for 70 years. The Mishnah Avot says that there are 4 Averot that bring about Galut. What are the 4 Averot? So you have the first 3, the cardinal sins of Judaism, of Shfichat Damim, of murder and idolatry and sexual licentiousness. And the 4th is what? Shemitah. Shemitah creates Galut, exile. And this raises an interesting question. The other 3 Averot, they're the cardinal sins of Judaism. We can understand why violation of these sins creates such a harsh penalty. But why exactly does Shemitah create this punishment? What is the fundamental connection between Shemitah and the land, such that when we don't keep Shemitah, we no longer deserve to live in this land? When we say that the Jews are the owner of the land, that's true. But whether they actually remain in the land is in part based on our level of understanding and keeping the sense of Shemitah. And considering the fact that the fight with Hamas and Israel is about who has the right to claim ownership of this land, part of the Inyana Dioma is to better understand the connection between Shemitah and the land. What is it about Shemitah that makes it so central? What is it about Shemitah that our very existence on the land is dependent on its observance? What I'd like to do with you tonight is discuss a couple of approaches to understand the message of Shemitah, basically to take finally a modern look at some of the classic sources. So let's start with the Torah and see where the Torah says is the goal of Shemitah. Let's begin actually by source number, let's begin by 5. Let's start with 5. The question is, what is the point, what is the purpose of Shemitah? So there are different laws that relate to Shemitah. Kate Sheva Shanim Taseh Shmita, V'zeh Devar Shmita, Shemot Ko Ba'am Maseh Yado, Asher Yashem B'Rayeu, Lo Yigos Et Rayeu V'et Achiv, Ki Kra Shmita L'Hashem. In this paragraph, we're told, we didn't get up to the issue of Pur's bull, but we're told that at 7 years, or at the end of 7 years, as important machloket, we're told that what happens during those years, what happens in the 7th year, all of the debts are canceled. There's an amnesty, a debt amnesty. All the debts are canceled. Now, who is this supposed to be helping? Who does it help if all the debts are canceled? The poor. Okay? So Shemitah is there, you're helping the poor, all the debts are canceled, you're helping the poor. Okay, let's keep that in mind. Look now back at source number 2. No, don't look at source number 2. Look at... So many sources. Look at source number 4. Look at source number 4. Look at source number 4. V'ger lo tilchatz v'atem yidatem et nefesh hager ki yirim hayitem be'eretz Mitzrayim. You shouldn't oppress the ger. V'sheish shanim tizra et artzecha v'asafta et tzvuata v'ashviyit tishamtenu v'netashta. That what should happen? 6 years you'll seed the land, you'll gather the fruit. The 7th year you're going to let it lie fallow. Okay, you're going to leave it. And who's going to eat it? Who's going to eat the field? You're going to leave the produce as hefker. Who's going to eat it? The poor and the animals. So again, what's the focus of Shemitah? What's the goal of Shemitah? Who's Shemitah helping? The poor, right? The poor, and interesting, the animal connection is very interesting. We're not going to go into that now. But the goal of Shemitah, whether it's Shmitat Ksafim, you're giving up the debts, or whether it's when it comes to letting the land lie in a way where, not fallow, I actually translate that incorrectly, you're letting the land go and not gathering in the produce. Who is the ones who are benefiting from this? The poor. Okay. Now contrast this with a different presentation of Shemitah that we see back in the main section of Shemitah, and this is source number 1. Let's look at source number 1. And think about, when we reach source number, what is the difference between how Shemitah is presented in the last 2 sources and how Shemitah is presented in this source. V'daber Hashem Moshe b'har Sinai lemor. Daber b'nei Yisrael v'amarta lehem ki tavo la'aretz she'ani noten lechem v'shavta ha'aretz Shabbat la'Hashem. That I'll give to you the land that I'll give to you should rest. It should be Shabbat la'Hashem. Sheish shanim tizras tzadcha v'sheish shanim tizmar kamecha v'safta et tzvuata. That what's going to happen? 6 years, you're going to seed the land. 6 years, you're going to seed the land and prune the karmecha, the vineyards, the satavota. You gather in the produce. Ubashana shviat Shabbat Shabbatoni la'aretz Shabbat la'Hashem sadcha lo tizra v'karmecha lo tizmor. Etzafiach yitzircha lo tiktzor v'tinvei nizirecha lo tivtzor. The 7th year, you're going to refrain from doing any work on the land itself. Shnat Shabbatoni la'aretz. It should be a shnat, a year of rest for the land. V'haita Shabbat ha'aretz lachem la'achla. It should be a Shabbat for the haaretz for you to eat. L'cha l'avdecha l'amotecha l'sircha l'toshva l'gerim imach. For your slaves and your maidservants, your workers, and the gerim toshavim that live with you. And also for the animals. Now, what is the difference between how the Torah presents this year in Vayikra with how we saw the Torah presented the year in the other sources? What are the differences? Okay, first of all, it's very interesting. There is no mention of poor people. Who's mentioned? Animals. Who else is mentioned besides animals? Slaves. Who else? Workers. Gerim Toshavim. The Gerim Toshavim probably work for you or with you. Okay, I think the focus is not on the poor, but on who? What's the common denominator between this group? They're what? They're workers who rely. They're the people that rely on you. Okay. Now somebody said something also interesting. Who else is supposed to eat this food? Lachem. It's for you. It's for you. That wasn't mentioned before. in the presentation in Shemot, the fruit, we're letting the fruit go so everybody else can eat. But now it's not just for anybody else. You, the landowner, benefits. Okay, what other differences do you see here? What other differences in these psukim? Say again. Okay, first time it says Hashem, it's Shabbat la Hashem. Very important. Any other differences? Shabbat la Hashem, any other differences? Shabbat la Hashem, Shabbat la Aretz. What is the manifestation that it's a Shabbat la Aretz? What does it mean that it's a Shabbat la Aretz? Say again? How does the land rest? You don't work on it. That's the first time that's mentioned. In the other two sources, it doesn't say you don't work on the land. It's just you let the fruit, anybody eat the fruit. It doesn't say anything about letting the land. In fact, if you look carefully, there's a different Hebrew word that's used in this parsha as opposed to the Hebrew word used in the other parshiot to describe the year. What's the Hebrew word? Okay, Yafed, that's true too, which is the different pruning, the different things you do in the land. I mean, what's the Hebrew word used to describe the year in this parsha? Shabbat, Shnat Shabbaton. What's the word used in the other parshiot? Shemitah. Shemitah and Shabbaton are two different things. Shnat Shemitah and Shnat Shabbaton. Shemitah is not used here. Shnat Shabbaton, Shnat Shabbaton is Shabbat La'aretz. It's the land resting. The Shemitah is you relinquish your claims. You relinquish your claims on the loans. You relinquish your claims on the payroll. Right? There's a very different focus. And the parsha